So I'm going to call up our next speaker now. And how many people know what developer relations is? How many people know what DevRel is? Okay, I think this is the audience for the talk. So I'm going to be calling Edidiong right now to come to talk to us about kickstarting a career in developer relations.
Cool. Welcome to my talk on how to kickstart a career in developer relations. Stuff is weird. All right, so with the rise of communities in the ecosystem, more and more companies have begun to understand the importance of communities and having a developer relations team, right? They can see how valuable this developer relations team can be to the company. And because more companies are looking for people in that ecosystem, it means that there's also a rise or a need for developer advocates, community managers, and other members of developer relations team. However, there are still some people who do not know what developer relations mean or how to even start a career in it. So, in this talk, I'm going to help you understand what developer relations is and share some tips on how to actually start a career as someone who works in the developer relations team. All right. Oh, shit, stuff is moving too fast. My name is Edidiong Asikpo. It can be quite hard to pronounce if you're not from Akwa Ibom. So I often go by Edidi, which is a short form of Edidiong. But if you can pronounce Edidiong, I actually prefer that because, I mean, that's the name my parents gave to me. I currently work as a senior developer advocate at Ambassador Labs. You would oftentimes find me writing, building, or sharing knowledge with people in the developer community. So, this stuff keeps chill. All right, so there is this misconception, right, where people believe that developer relations is developer advocacy, or they just like kind of confuse it between each other. So I figured that would be like a good place to start from. So let's assume that this talk was titled Kickstarting a Career in Software Engineering, and you went back home, implemented the feedback that I shared, and eventually started your career in engineering. What would you classify yourself as? Would you classify yourself as a software engineering or a software engineer? I can't hear you. Awesome. So that's what developer relations is as well. Like it's similar to that. So it's not necessarily a role. It's more of a department or a term you use for different teams or different roles that can fall under developer relations. For instance, a typical developer relations team would have developer advocates, software engineers, technical writers, community managers, or even a marketing team, for instance. But people don't know this, right? Or, like I said, people always make this confusion. So you would hear somebody say, oh, I work as a developer relations in, let's say, in company yellow, for instance, which is technically not correct because you are not the entire team. I know that some companies probably have just one person who is in that team, right? But then the actual or the correct way to say would be that you work as a developer advocate in the developer relations team at a certain company. Does that make sense? All right, so for instance, I work as a senior developer advocate in the developer relations team at Ambassador Labs. That's how you typically say it. So, like I mentioned, there are several teams or several roles that could play a part in the developer relations team. Software engineers, technical writers, developer advocates, and the rest of them. And so imagine if you're a software engineer in the developer relations team, you'll pretty much be doing the same thing you do as a core software engineer, but this time it will be based towards the goals of a developer relations team, which I will explain later. And this also applies to being a technical writer, a community manager, or being a marketer as well. And because we've had several talks like yesterday and today focused on software engineering, community management, technical writing, there's really not been a talk focused on developer advocacy. And because I have just 15 minutes to give this talk, I figured I would focus on developer advocates, right? So, like I mentioned, developer relations does not equal developer advocacy or being a developer advocate. So now I'm going to explain how you can actually become a developer advocate. So first of all, what does it mean to be a developer advocate? Just like people confuse developer relations and developer advocacy, there's also no one defined way to explain what being a developer advocate is. Several people and several companies define it in several ways. However, what these definitions always have is these three things: creating, community, and company. And I like to think of this as the 3 C's of developer advocacy. So typically, a developer advocate would be tasked with doing things like creating awareness about the company's product in the community. Sometimes it's not even just about the company's product. It could be just creating some content around maybe JavaScript, Kubernetes, whatever platform they are using. It must not always be tied to your company's product, right? And they would do this through blog posts, videos, posting on Twitter, posting on LinkedIn, TikTok now. We now have TikTok. So any of the social media platforms that you typically use. And then the other one is fostering a smooth experience between community members and the company. So that means people who are using your company's products, you're hosting demos, speaking with software engineers to let them know, hey, this is how to use this particular tool, or maybe they have an issue, right, trying to understand how to implement something, right? So for instance, I work at a cloud-native company which is more focused on Kubernetes, and sometimes people would have issues with implementing the company's product. So as a developer advocate, what I would do there is get on a call with that person, understand what's going on with them, figure out how to solve the problem for them, and eventually get them to reach a point where the issue is solved. And then finally is serving as a middleman between the company and the community. So let's assume people are complaining or maybe yabbing the company on Twitter, for instance. So your role as a developer advocate here would be to go back to the company and say, hey, people are complaining about this, or people need this certain solution. Sometimes it could be one-on-one conversations with people, right? So when I used to work at Hashnode, there were so many Nigerians who used Hashnode as well. So people would often reach out to me with DMs, Didi, something is down. And then what I would do in that point is go to the engineering team and let them know that something is wrong. So you're pretty much serving as a middleman between people who use your company's products and the company. So like I said, you can see that I tried to make those 3 C's bold: creating, community, and company. People would define developer advocacy in several ways, but you'd often find that they're always integrated into these 3 things. So pretty much you can say that the role of a developer advocate is to help developers to successfully use a platform or technology, which in this case could be your company's product. All right, so how can you actually become a developer advocate? The first thing would be for you to gain technical knowledge. There is this misconception, I've seen so many tweets about it, of people thinking that developer advocates don't know how to code, which is absolutely not true. I've seen so many tweets and I just oh, okay. So have you ever had a conversation with somebody about tech? If you have, carry up your hand. All right, cool, awesome. So when you have these conversations, let's say you're talking about Kubernetes or Flutter, whatever technology that you know, right? You can oftentimes tell, or rather, no. Can you, 1 second. So when you have this conversation with the person, right, you can tell whether the person is technically sound or not, right? Can you? Awesome. So it means that you can tell, oh, this person don't know anything they talk, or, okay, this person is sabi, something like that. And like I mentioned earlier, developer advocates have to speak with other software engineers of certain companies using their products. So do you believe that somebody who is not technically sound enough would be able to convince another engineer to use a product or help them solve that problem? Did you get my question? So do you believe that? Exactly. So it means that in order for you to be able to do your job the way you're supposed to, you need to be technically sound. So are you a developer advocate in a DevOps company? You need to know how to do DevOps. Are you a developer advocate in a company that uses JavaScript? You need to understand how to code with JavaScript because you need to be able to speak with other developers who understand these concepts as well. And this comes in very handy when developer advocates want to create technical articles, work on videos, speak at events, right? Sometimes I speak at events about my company's product. Imagine speaking to let's say I'm in a Kubernetes workshop, right? And everybody here all understands Kubernetes. And then I come to speak Kubernetes, but I don't know anything about it. Or someone asks me a question and I'm just completely dumb. You're not just embarrassing yourself, but also the company as well, right? Because people will be able to tell that you don't know what you're talking about, and that's not good for anybody. So developer advocates have to be technically sound. The other thing is, trying to share knowledge as well, right? And sharing knowledge could often be writing articles, creating videos, posting on social media, or responding to questions that's being asked in the community. I know that people are often always like saying, oh, I can't share knowledge because I don't really know anything. But how I like to think about it is, imagine if you've been in tech for like, let's say 1 month, or let's say 3 months, to be honest. There's someone who has just been in tech for like 1 week, right? And the knowledge that you've acquired in that 3 months is going to be beneficial to that person. So even if you think you don't know enough, trust me, you know something that could be helpful to somebody else. And then another way I like to think about it is everybody has a unique voice, right? The way I explain something to you is different from how someone else will explain it to you. So the way you explain might actually click to somebody else, right? Let's imagine that there are 100 people in the world, and you and I are the 2 people who know JavaScript. I can write this article, and only 50 people out of these 100 people in the world would understand it. But the other 50 are like, what the hell is this girl saying? And then you now write your own article, and these other 50 people understand it. So it's not like I didn't explain the stuff correctly. It's just that the way I explained things did not click to them, but the way you explained just clicked to them. So don't be scared to share knowledge, regardless of how you feel about your capacity. And then the third one is being active in the developer community. So most of the developer advocates I know now are people who were leading GDGs, DevC, when DevC used to be alive, speaking at events, helping out with like Oscar Fest, stuff like this. So when you're active in the developer community, it means that people get to know you for being someone who is knowledgeable about a particular subject matter. So let's say you're always giving talks about JavaScript, and then an opportunity comes up, I already think, okay, hey, I know this person who is into JavaScript. If there's another opportunity with like DevOps, I know Adora is into DevOps. Like she's the one that's going to come into my head at first because she's active in the developer community and talks about these things. And then the final one is you have to keep learning. So there's a friend of mine that shared a tweet one time saying, does being in tech mean you have to learn all the time? And I was like, yep, that's exactly what it means. You have to be learning half of the time. And I mean, I know that there are people who enjoy learning, and then there are other people like me who just do it because we have to. But you often have to keep learning. And this is because developer advocates have to create content. Sometimes you could be creating content for something you've not used before, so you have to learn it on scratch. Or you could be collaborating with like other developer advocates from another company. So you have to get up to speed as quickly as possible. So we've talked about what DevRel is, gone further to developer advocacy, shared how to get started, and then the final session is benefits of being a developer advocate. So the first one is sharing knowledge, right? You realize that whenever you write an article, is anybody that writes articles here? Can I see your hand? All right, awesome. So before you start writing an article and after you start writing it, do you notice that your knowledge of that particular subject matter improves? Exactly. So when you're a developer advocate, you're oftentimes sharing knowledge. So it means the more knowledge you share, the more educated you become about that subject matter. So it's like a win-win for the readers and also for you as well. And then the second one is that people get to know you in the field as someone who is knowledgeable about that subject matter. Do I need someone who knows Kubernetes? I'm probably going to Obi now. Do I need someone who is like into JavaScript? I know who I can think of. Do I need someone who is into technical writing? I know who I can think of because I've seen them being active in the developer community or they're developer advocates for one company or the other. And then the third one is that you get to meet so many people. So like, for instance, when you're a developer advocate, you oftentimes have to travel to several like countries or states, for instance, and you get to meet several people that you've like known on Twitter or you've met like somewhere else online. So you get the opportunity to build those relationships, see people in person, and have a great time, to be honest. And then the other one is you get to travel around the world, all expense paid. Like, I can't count how many countries I've traveled to, and then my company has to pay for it. Of course, I'm speaking about the company's products. Let's say I'm going to Spain to speak at KubeCon. I finished speaking, but it means I'll still tour Spain now. I'll still say, Didi has gone to Spain. I'll still have like free hotel, like free food and all of those stuff. So fine, you get to do stuff for the company, but then you also get to benefit from it as well. And then finally, you build a brand for yourself. So even if you're talking about, let's say, Hashnode or Ambassador Lab, you're talking about whatever, people get to know you through that company. So even when you leave the company, the brand you have for yourself does not go up. People still know that, oh, this person works at that company, or this person is knowledgeable about a particular thing. So in conclusion, being a developer advocate is really incredible. I made this tweet sometime last year, but you get to code, write, speak, meet fantastic people, travel, and learn in the process. And like I mentioned, this is not just about being a developer advocate. You could still be a software engineer, community manager, or technical writer that works in the developer relations team. But as a developer advocate, you oftentimes have to mix all of these things, which could be coding, writing, speaking, meeting people, etc. Thank you very much.